Hello guys, TAFHD here and welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be taking a look at this. This is my second generation iPod Touch that I've had now for about 10 years. I've also got a fourth generation iPod Touch which I was going to take a look at in this video, but the battery won't hold any sort of charge. So I'll have to keep it on charge for the whole video, and I can't really be bothered doing that right now because I don't have a cable long enough to get to my desk. So there will be a dedicated video about that fourth generation iPod in the near future, but that's not the focus of today's video. Today's video is about this. This is a second generation iPod Touch. As you can see with these iPod Touches, they do get very scratched on the back. I bought this used about 10 years ago for £40 online, I believe, and I got a good few years use out of it. It always looked like that on the back. I kept it in a case and in quite good condition when I was using it, and this was actually my first Apple device. Before I had an iPhone or a Mac or anything else, I had this. This was the first Apple product I ever owned. I remember being very excited when this thing arrived in the post, and it still is quite a cool device. I think for £40 10 years ago, that's actually fairly reasonable. I'm not sure what these things are worth now, but I'm guessing it's probably somewhere around the £30 or £40 mark, meaning this thing hasn't really depreciated, and somehow it manages to hold its charge quite well. I've just fully charged it and it looks to still have quite a bit left, so I think that we can just unlock this thing and get straight into it. I should probably also say that this is an 8GB model, and of course, being a second gen, there is no camera on here. There's just that weird cutout for the antennas, which looks like a camera should be there, but it isn't. I believe the fourth generation was the first one to have a camera. I believe there were some third generation prototypes which had cameras, but that never made it to the official model, so the fourth gen was the first to have a camera. This thing just has that funny thing that looks like it should be one, but it isn't. And on the top, the lock button is on the left hand side, when on the iPhones it was on the right, so that was one differentiating feature. On the side we've got the volume up and down. It's on sort of a rocker button like the earlier iPhones were, the 2G, 3G and 3GS. It was with the 4 when they changed to individual little buttons, so this has sort of the style that the older iPhones had. And in the bottom we've got a 30-pin connector and our headphone output. Now of course at the time these things were sort of known for being plonked inside stereos and things and then blasting out your music. I did that a lot. I've got a few stereos that I used this with, and it was actually a very cool thing to do. Now those stereos are kind of obsolete because no one has an iDevice with a 30-pin connector, so that is kind of useless these days, but this thing is still pretty capable at playing music if you can get it on here, because I don't think the iTunes store works anymore. We can't discuss that in today's video really and show that because it won't connect to the internet. I'm not sure if my Wi-Fi is the problem or whether it's the device, but nothing that I do will get it to work. But I think that's enough talking. Let's get into this thing. So I should probably say date and time is wrong because there's no internet. There's no point me changing it because it will just lose its memory once I turn it off again. So that will just stay as it is. And that background, that's a really cool background. It's one of those blueprint ones which quite a lot of people had back in the day. I remember seeing quite a few YouTubers using this background or similar. It is really cool. I hope you can see that just fine. Alright, so let's now unlock this thing. I should probably say that the viewing angles on this screen, because it's pre-retina and all sorts of other things, they're really bad, just so it's angled so you can see what's going on. I can't see anything where I am, so I'm actually going to struggle quite a bit to see what I'm actually doing. I can just see a sort of dark blue mess from where I am, but from where you are, you should probably be able to see it just fine. So of course, pre-retina, it's a fairly low resolution screen, but it does get the job done. It's really not a very smooth interface, to be honest. And I think the first thing we should do is find out which version of the operating system this is. I think at this point it was called iOS. Don't remember which version this is, so let's go and find out. This is version 4.2.1, and that is the latest version that this thing can run. I was quite disappointed at one point with this because I couldn't install more modern apps on it because of the software limitation, but it's not really too much of a problem. I still managed to get most of the things that I want, and you can probably see just by going through this interface how slow this thing is. I press it and then it takes a while to load, but it's old. You've got to just expect that sort of thing with something that is this old. So I thought we'd just take a look around what I've got on here and just see what it can do. So despite not having a camera, this thing does actually have a photos app. So you couldn't take photos, but you could put photos on here and save images here that you got from other apps or screenshots or that sort of thing. Don't really know what most of this is, to be honest. Like, what is that? I haven't got a clue, but that is what it is, and there's lots of other things like that just on here, just screenshots. Don't really know why I took so many screenshots, but they're all here, and also some weird pictures I drew in some sort of app. I saved those in here, so it's quite cool to look back on this to see kind of what I was up to at the time, but it's also kind of weird. So let's close out of that. Notes, I'm guessing there's going to be some bad stuff I'm going to need to blur out from here just because it's not really appropriate. But a lot of it's just random things like that, just pressing random buttons to make random notes. Let's see if there's anything else like that. Yeah, like, what's the point in that? This was on the 16th of November at 14 minutes past 7 in the evening. Don't know what date, it doesn't actually say. But yeah, most of this is just utter rubbish. Like, what's that? What does that even mean? I honestly haven't got a clue, but it is pretty cool to see. Calculator, that's just a calculator as you would expect. Don't think there's anything in videos, although let's take a look. No, nothing in there. You can download videos from iTunes. No, we can't, because that does not work anymore. Game Center, is that still a thing? I'm not actually sure. I've never used Game Center. I never really understood what it was really all about, so let's go out of that. Nike and iPod, I never understood this either. I think you needed to have a special thing to clip onto yourself to make it work, because all it ever used to say to me was walk around to activate your sensor. So I'm guessing I needed a sensor, and I didn't have one. Let's see if we can actually make it start and say that.
Walk around to activate your sensor.
Yeah, I don't have a sensor, so I never got that to work. Let's go out of that. Then clock, that's just a clock as you would expect. Alarm, stopwatch, timer, all that sort of thing. Let's look at the stopwatch. I did something in there at some point, and I wanted a 1-minute timer. Don't remember what that was for. And then YouTube, that is of course the old YouTube app, which does not do anything even if you are connected to the internet. That was cut off a good few years ago. This is emoji. This is from before emojis were built in to devices and you had to get a separate app to have them. And this is an example of some of it apparently, and it gave you emojis for your keyboard as well. This is some sort of pedometer app, I think, for tracking steps. I actually remember using this in Spain at some point. I think I was somewhere near Madrid and I used this. And it's pretty cool that it remembers what the latest thing was. I sure don't remember that, but it does. So that is pretty cool. At the bottom, iTunes App Store, Mail and Music. Let's take a look in Music. I think that will still be on here. Yeah, these are some things from iTunes which are downloaded on here. Bit of a random mix, such as the Bob the Builder album. That's kind of strange. Some more normal stuff on there, but nothing that I'm really too interested in. I will play a little bit just for me to hear, to appreciate how crap the speaker is on this, but the point of this wasn't to play music like out loud. It was to plug your headphones in or to plug it into a stereo or something like that, so the internal speaker didn't really matter. Yeah, it's a really tinny speaker, but as I said, it's not really what it was for. On the next page there's lots of folders and things. What's in here? Google, Earth, Safari and Google. Those are all very old logos. Google's not used that logo for a very long time now, in fact, and it won't work probably even if I did have internet. Talking animals. This is all things like that Talking Tom Cat thing. This is all like other ones talking other things. Talking John. This is actually a pretty iconic game. John is a bacteria, and you get to be a bacteria and do things, which is pretty cool. I don't really remember how to play this, but this is just weird bacteria stuff, yeah. What a great idea for a game. And then there's just other things like that in there. Drawing, that's just things for drawing. I used to do that quite a lot. Cat piano, I liked cat piano so much I have 3 of them. Let's just give one of these a quick go. Well, there we are. It's a piano that sounds like a cat. Very nice, I guess. Don't know why I needed 3 of them, but there they are. Finally, games. There's just some games in there. Yummy Burger, I haven't got a clue. But Turbo Granny, this thing's pretty cool. This is actually a very cool game. I remember playing this quite a lot back in the day. Don't think I can do a very good job now, just because I'm looking at it with such a wonky angle and you've kind of got to lean and do all sorts of things. It's not very good for making a video about, but that is a pretty good game. And I just double press the home button to try and bring up that thing where you can swipe out apps you don't want anymore. That wasn't a thing yet, so I just double pressed it and it brought up the last app I had open. That's different to how it is now. Let's press that again and we should end up back in Turbo Granny maybe? No, I don't actually know how that works. It's been a long time since I've messed around with this sort of old thing. And that is pretty much everything that's on here. So I think that is pretty much it. I just wanted to take a quick look around this thing because I think it's quite cool just to look at such an old device. Of course now the iPod Touch has officially stopped being made. They have said that there will be no more iPod Touch 7th generations being made, and however much stock is left is pretty much it. And I think they sold out very, very quickly because people bought them probably to sell all on eBay for a stupid high price. Or maybe people are just a bit nostalgic about them because, like me, they had one back in the day, probably before they ever had an iPhone or any sort of smartphone. So it's just a cool thing to look back on. But I think before I do leave this video, I should probably say at least one useful bit of information, like one of the specs. So of course this is a tiny device now, 3.5-inch screen, and that is a 480 by 320 resolution, and that is 163 pixels per inch, but there's not many inches, meaning there's not actually that many pixels. And let's just have a go at typing on this thing just to see how tiny the keyboard really is. I really do struggle to actually type on this thing, and it is quite laggy as well, which doesn't help. I can just about type, but I've got to be pretty careful with how I do it. If we compare the size of that to my S20 Plus, that's just a massive difference. And people back in the day complained that this thing was too big. Compare that to what we've got now. This is massive. I guess this would have been considered a phablet if they were a thing back then. I'm pretty sure this would be phablet size. This is 6.5 inches, 3.5 inches, there's like 3 inches difference, and 3 inches in this scenario is quite a lot, so it is pretty cool to see the difference between these two. But I think that will now be it. I just wanted to have a look around it, and I think I've done that quite nicely. So if you had an iPod or something back in the day, please do let me know. And if you would like to see the second video about my other iPod, please do let me know as well. That should be coming within a few weeks or something like that. So thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one, which may or may not be some sort of Apple stuff. Who knows? So thank you again, and goodbye.